Tonight, we're finding the latest developments out of New York. We learned late this afternoon a rookie NYPD officer being indicted, that in the death of Akai Gurley. What Mayor de Blasio and PBA President Pat Lynch have to say about the indictment surrounding this officer involved in the shooting. And we are speaking with Senator Richard Blumenthal one-on-one. He's the senator from Connecticut discussing the deadly Metro North crash that claimed 6 lives in New York, while Blumenthal says he believes this collision could have been prevented. Plus, the nation's top newsman, he's expected to learn his fate this week. Will Brian Williams remain in the anchor seat or get the boot from the NBC execs? Williams, he's riding out as the validity of other stories he's told here come into question. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A lot to get to in the next 60 minutes, but thank you for joining us. And we start tonight with developing news out of New York, where a Brooklyn grand jury has indicted a rookie New York Police Department officer accused of fatally shooting an unarmed man. Officer Peter Leong, he's facing manslaughter charges in the death of Akai Gurley. Police say Leong accidentally shot and killed Gurley in the stairwell of a Brooklyn housing complex last November. Leong was patrolling the building at a time with another rookie police officer. The mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, releasing this statement following the indictment when it came down, saying it had been reported that a Brooklyn grand jury has acted in this case. No matter the specific charges, this case is an unspeakable tragedy for the Gurley family. We urge everyone to respect the judicial process as it unfolds. PBA President Pat Lynch, he also spoke out about the indictment, saying Leong should be granted, quote, the same due process afforded to anyone involved in the accidental death of another. Lynch went on to say the fact that he was assigned to patrol one of the most dangerous housing projects in the city must be considered among the circumstances of this tragic incident, end quote. All right, let's bring in our panel. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author. Brad Gersman, political consultant and founding partner of Gotham Government Relations. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. This wasn't a slam dunk, Dominic, that they'd be an indictment. There's a lot of questions as to who should have even handled the case. And the Brooklyn district attorney, he fought a lot of us saying, listen, this is different than Staten Island. This was different than what happened in Missouri. We can handle it in Brooklyn. We can impanel a grand jury, and we can even secure an indictment if the facts warrant. A lot of people said they needed to either go to the feds or go to an independent prosecutor to do this. At least there was an indictment secured. I know you made some phone calls today. What kind of reaction has this gotten?
Well, basically what I'm being told, officials have a wait-and-see approach. It depends on which side of the aisle you come down on this. If you want to see the officer convicted, folks were saying today this is only an indictment. It really does not mean anything. It's just a formal charging. Now there has to be a trial in which the officer is looking at manslaughter charges. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out, Richard. But keep in mind, this district attorney, Ken Thompson, the second black district attorney in the state of New York, he is really becoming Mr. Prosecutor going after police officers. Just last week, another cop was indicted, I believe a Dominican-American police officer, for stomping on the head, allegedly, in a video of a man. Just last week, this same district attorney. So he's brand new. He was also the prosecutor in the Abner Louima case, one of the prosecutors, one of the federal prosecutors, and he's making his name. Normally, prosecutors don't do this. It appears that this newly in-office prosecutor is making his name on going after police officers.
I think it also provides some insight into how these things work before grand juries. I mean, Ken Thompson, I think everybody assumed wanted an indictment, got an indictment. Dan Donovan, in the case in Staten Island, most people assumed he didn't particularly want an indictment. No indictment came down, and we know that the prosecutor in Ferguson didn't want an indictment, and lo and behold, no indictment from the grand jury.
If I could add, I was a prosecutor and I worked for Rob Johnson in the Bronx in my early days as a lawyer. And I guess a prosecutor can, put evidence into the grand jury to the, on the side of where they want things to fall. But at the end of the day, as every DA in their county should be able to handle police cases, and that's what really the thrust of what we're asking today is. Do we need anyone else to ever step in to be able to manage a police criminal matter? And the answer should be absolutely no. The DAs are there. They know how to handle cases.
Well, keep your legal hat on for a second, because The officer in question here paired with another rookie cop. Nobody debates they were in a rough housing project. However, protocol says you don't do a vertical search, or in this case, when he's walking up a stairwell, dimly lit and everything else, with your gun drawn.
Right.
Okay, they weren't responding to a case. They were just doing, basically going up the stairwell. And it's easy for me to say from the comfort of a studio what that's like. But that all said, Brad, the guy walks out of a stairwell. No gun. He lives in the apartment. The elevator's not working. He's got to take the stairs down, and he gets shot. To prove negligence, which seems to be the standard here for where they're going, is it enough to say you shouldn't have had your gun drawn? There was no actionable facts that said that you were doing the right thing and you weren't following training.
In my estimation, having your gun drawn alone is not enough to prove this case. I'd like to know more about the facts and circumstances of A, why the gun was out of the holster, and two, what if anything occurred that made the cop in any way fire that weapon or accidentally discharge that weapon as they're using. So when they say discharge, someone pressed the trigger. There's a reason why the trigger was pressed. Your finger just doesn't move for no reason. If you were scared for a second, there's a lot to this. It's going to be interesting. The indictment, as Dominic said, is just a charge. It's meaningless. However, based on some of the circumstances where indictments were, true bills were not found by the grand juries, then this is meaningful for those who wanted to see something done.
And finally, Dominic, to that point, a lot of people, as you said before, this is only the first step. Now it goes to the trial phase. However, does this quiet some of the cynics who said that you can't secure a prosecute, you can't secure an indictment here if you're a local DA that's got to work with the cops from the action networks on down? Are they saying, okay, the guy's proven he's serious about trying to get a conviction here, or are they saying, I don't care, if you don't get a conviction, an indictment's not going to do it?
Well, to go back to Andrew's point, from looking at the reaction today from the National Action Network, Sharpton's organization, they are using today's indictment to say, see, when a prosecutor really wants to get an indictment, they can get it. And then they contradict that with the Eric Garner case. And so Dan Donovan, the Staten Island District Attorney, and Eric Garner, that case is going to loom over this, even though they're two separate incidents. It's going to be very interesting. But I don't think people, how they feel, I don't think they're really going to change their perspectives based on this one case.
Can I just add quickly, one thing is that this is ripe for a plea bargain, okay? So this isn't one where I think that, this has to go to trial. There could be a plea bargain, there could be a deal that's struck, and this would get everybody off the hot seat, so to speak.
I want to turn to politics, and just last month, Governor Cuomo dug in his heels, and he's calling for reform in Albany. Now, if anybody forgets, remember when he said the following?
Either pass my budget or shut down the government. As you recall, President Clinton had a fundamental disagreement with Speaker Gingrich, and that's what it came to. Either pass the budget or shut down the government, and they shut down the government. I was there. It was ugly, but sometimes ugly is necessary. Change is disruptive, and transformative change is highly disruptive. And make no mistake, this will be highly disruptive. So I will not sign a budget that does not have an ethics plan as outlined in my proposal that addresses the current problems in the system.
Now, well, some people, the cynics would say, this is the same guy who shut down the Moreland Commission, and now, reform is the only thing that he's got to have if he's going to live in Albany. Suspend that for a moment. The governor, after he did that address, sat down with New York's Jeffrey Toobin, spoke about a few different issues. Also, he said up front, he'd cut deals with lawmakers on ethics and education despite his threats to shut down the government. Cuomo saying in part, my job is to get to yes. If I don't make a deal, I get nothing done. If I get nothing done, I'm a failure. If the objective is to make a nice speech, it means nothing. Okay, so Dom, I'll start with you on that point. I understand negotiation and bargains, how everything gets done. But how do you in one speech say, if I don't get my 5-point plan, I'm shutting this whole thing down here to, hey, a deal's a deal. I'll take what I can get.
Well, in fairness to the governor, on one hand, he was talking about ethics. On the other hand, he was talking about the way business is done in any state legislature. And guess what? He's correct. It's the art of the deal. Obama's learned that the hard way. no elected official, I don't care who you are, I don't care how good you are, how articulate you are, you're not going to get everything that you want. And so he was telling the truth on that. Now, on the ethics front, you know, one could say he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. And a lot of things that this governor says, when you read between the lines, it's like a backhanded shot at his father, Mario Cuomo.
I thought the same thing when I heard that.
Oh, he was definitely talking about his father.
Remember when he how so much he talked? He said it's great to have the speech, but you got to have
Right.
the delivery. It's
He
great
was
to have the
criticizing his
principles, but you
father.
got to have the politics. He also said in that same interview, Brett, I'm curious your take on this, that the insinuation that he shut down the Moreland Commission, knowing what was going to come down the pike with Shelley Silver, is ludicrous. He also made a comparison. He goes, if Anthony Weiner shows his private parts, do you blame Obama for that? There are criminal acts of individual legislators. What would you have me do? You're close to this. Do people believe that, were people shocked when Shelley Silver went down? And did anybody think that the Moreland Commission in putting together was onto something with Shelley Silver, and that played a role in this thing being disbanded when it was?
Well, as soon as those subpoenas went out to the different firms, law firms, asking for, you know, who your client lists are, how much people are getting paid, and all that kind of stuff, and then that got shut down, that's when the deal occurred on ethics with the governor and with the legislature. We, you know, kind of, it was interesting to listen to, and then I guess we never found out the answer. When Shelley did go down, it was complete shock. It's complete mayhem. I said this will take forever to get a new speaker. I was wrong. But nevertheless, it was something that was shocking to all. But when you look back on it, have there been questions about Shelley, his employment, the association with the New York State trial lawyers, all these different things, and then he's made a fortune of money? You can't just look at it and say, wow, nothing has anything to do with each other here. These are all independent and are isolated. But at the end of the day, is you know, look, Preet Bharara is a serious prosecutor. He's an intelligent man, and he is, according to him, he's going where the evidence is, and he's
and he also gave us another clue here, did Bharara today, Andrew, that, you know what, he could have kept going. He could have talked. The governor could have talked to anybody he wanted about Moreland. This idea that he's telling everybody I gave everybody a gag order didn't come from my office.
Yeah, and Cuomo's been deflecting any questions about Moreland or about, you know, continuing issues related to Bharara by saying Bharara said there's an open investigation and I shouldn't talk about it. Bharara gave an interview to NBC today where it's like, I never told the governor that. He's free to talk about anything he wants to talk about.
Yeah, but he's smart not to.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
He's smart. The governor is smart not to. Don't touch. If someone's investigating, you know, keep your nose out of it.
But we see Cuomo pull the legs out from under a lot of other people. It's interesting to see Bharara pull the legs out from under Cuomo. He basically took away his excuse. You're right, Cuomo doesn't want to talk about it, but the excuse he had been using has now been taken away.
All right, guys, we jump to a break. And when we come back, we'll be speaking with Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut about, among other things, the deadly Metro North crash that killed and took the lives of 6 people from our region last week. Why he says he believes the crash could have been avoided. We'll also be talking about campus sex assault reforms here, as well as Benjamin Netanyahu coming to Capitol Hill and whether or not he'll be sitting there in attendance or walking out.